On the cool, dry second Saturday of April 1972, Sarah Pratt Wentworth knelt at the open inner cover of the first white-painted wooden Langstroth honeybee hive box at the south end of the apiary row at the back of the 80-acre Wentworth family operation on the section road 3 miles south of Houlton, Maine. And she lifted a single frame of brood comb out of the open hive box with both hands and held the frame against the cool, dry, Aroostook April morning sky to check the spring brood pattern. The bees on the frame in her hands were the heritage Buckfast honeybees that her late mother-in-law Beatrice Wentworth had imported from Brother Adam at Buckfast Abbey in Devon, England, across the 15-year correspondence and import permit period between the spring of 1953 and the autumn of 1968. The Buckfast bees were darker than the commercial Italian honeybees that the commercial pollinator industry beekeepers of Aroostook County kept across the rest of the Maine apple and clover meadows in 1972. The Buckfast had chestnut-brown abdomens and a soft black overcoat hair across the thorax, and the Buckfast worked the cool early spring Aroostook clover and apple blossom in a methodical hive rhythm that the small commercial Italian honeybee colonies could not match in the cool, dry, 45-degree Aroostook April mornings. Sarah turned the frame in her hands and counted the worker brood cells and the drone brood cells and the new queen cells in the careful longhand spring brood pattern survey that Beatrice had taught her across the long summer of 1965. The spring 1972 brood pattern was healthy, and the new queen cells were properly capped, and the worker brood pattern was uniform across the open frame. Sarah set the frame quietly back into the open hive box, and she replaced the inner cover and she closed the outer cover. She walked the apiary row to the next white-painted wooden hive box, and she opened the outer cover. Across the section road 300 yards to the east, on the section road blacktop running south from Houlton, a green 1968 Ford F-100 pickup truck rolled slowly past the open gate at the south end of the Wentworth family operation. Mort Stebbins was driving the green pickup truck, and Hank Bradbury was in the middle passenger seat, and Floyd Whittemore was in the right passenger seat. The three of them were on the bright Saturday morning 75-mile drive from the clapboard Bradbury and Whittemore and Stebbins commercial pollinator industry apiaries north of Caribou, Maine, to the annual Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association annual spring meeting at the Houlton Grange Hall on State Highway 1. As the green pickup truck rolled past the open gate at the south end of the Wentworth family operation, the three of them turned their heads in unison toward the apiary row at the back of the 80-acre operation, and Mort lowered the driver's side window, and Hank leaned across Mort to lower his head out the driver's side window, and Floyd leaned across both of them to lower his head out the driver's side window, and the three of them shouted something across the section road at Sarah at the apiary row that Sarah could not hear over the noise of the green pickup truck's exhaust. Mort threw his head back at the driver's side window in patient public laughter, and Hank threw his head back across Mort's shoulder in laughter, and Floyd threw his head back across both of them in laughter, and the three of them rolled past the open gate at the south end of the Wentworth family operation in the green pickup truck and continued the slow north to south drive along the section road blacktop toward the Houlton Grange Hall. Sarah did not look up from the apiary row at the green pickup truck rolling past the open gate. She set the inner cover back on the open hive box she was working and she closed the outer cover. Ezra came out of the wood and tin apiary shed at the back of the apiary row at 9:06 in the cool, dry, Aroostook April morning with 2 enameled tin cups of strong black coffee, and he handed one of the enameled tin cups to Sarah at the apiary row, and he set down the second enameled tin cup on the wagon wheel platform beside the open apiary shed door, and waited quietly for Sarah to finish the morning spring brood pattern survey of the 80 hive boxes. Caleb came out of the clapboard Wentworth farmhouse at 9:14 in his denim chambray work shirt and his faded blue Wrangler jeans and his worn brown leather beekeeper's cap. And Caleb walked the apiary row to where Sarah and Ezra were waiting at the wagon wheel platform beside the open apiary shed door. And Caleb said quietly to Sarah and Ezra that he had finished the Saturday morning calving shed work at the 4-cow heritage Devon dairy cow operation at the back of the 80-acre family operation, and that he was ready to help Sarah with the apiary row survey across the rest of the cool, dry Aroostook April morning. Hannah came out of the clapboard Wentworth farmhouse at 9:17 in her chambray work shirt and her 2 long, thick ash-brown braids and her own worn beige canvas beekeeper's apron. And Hannah walked the apiary row to where Sarah and Ezra and Caleb were waiting at the wagon wheel platform. And Hannah said quietly that she had finished the Saturday morning kitchen table breakfast dishes and that she was ready to help. The 4 of them worked the apiary row of 80 white-painted wooden Langstroth honeybee hive boxes across the rest of the cool, dry Aroostook April morning of April 8, 1972. The reason the Wentworth family apiary at the back of the 80-acre Wentworth family operation in Aroostook County, Maine, ran 80 Buckfast honeybee colonies in the spring of 1972, and not the standard commercial Italian honeybee colonies that the Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association membership ran, was a single 15-year correspondence between Sarah's late mother-in-law, Beatrice Wentworth, and the Benedictine monk brother Adam Kayla at Buckfast Abbey in Devon, England, between the spring of 1953 and the autumn of 1968. Brother Adam Kayla had been born Karl Kerle in Mittelbiberach, Germany in 1908, and had taken his Benedictine vows at Buckfast Abbey in Devon, England, at the age of 19 in the spring of 1927, and Brother Adam had been the apiary master at Buckfast Abbey continuously from the autumn of 1925 until his death in the autumn of 1996. Brother Adam had inherited the Buckfast Abbey apiary in the autumn of 1925 from his predecessor, Brother Columban, in the aftermath of the documented 1906 through 1922 Isle of Wight honeybee tracheal mite collapse that had effectively destroyed the native British black honeybee population across the southern British counties. The original Brother Columban Buckfast Abbey apiary had lost approximately 29 of its original 30 colonies to the Isle of Wight tracheal mite across the 9-year period between the spring of 1913 and the autumn of 1922, and the surviving single Buckfast Abbey colony at the autumn of 1922 had been a native British black and Italian cross colony that had survived the Isle of Wight tracheal mite through an accidental genetic recombination of the North African Apis mellifera intermissa and the native British Apis mellifera mellifera and the Italian Apis mellifera ligustica lineages. Brother Adam had spent the 4 decades between the autumn of 1925 and the autumn of 1968 on the deliberate cross-breeding work that gradually stabilized the accidental 1922 genetic recombination into the modern documented Buckfast honeybee line. And Brother Adam had documented the slow, patient, 4-decade cross-breeding work in the Brother Adam Apiary Journal collection at the Buckfast Abbey Library that remained the foundation reference document of the global Buckfast honeybee breeding program through the end of the 20th century. Beatrice Wentworth had first written to Brother Adam in the spring of 1953 at the recommendation of the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Service Apiary Research Program at Orono, Maine, after Beatrice had read a 3-page Brother Adam article on tracheal mite-resistant honeybee breeding in the American Bee Journal of November 1952. Beatrice had corresponded with Brother Adam quietly across the 15-year period between the spring of 1953 and the autumn of 1968, and Brother Adam had quietly shipped 4 Buckfast queen honeybees to the Wentworth family apiary at Holton, Maine, across the 15-year period. 1 Buckfast queen in the spring of 1956, 1 Buckfast queen in the spring of 1960, 1 Buckfast queen in the spring of 1964, and 1 final Buckfast queen in the autumn of 1967, 5 months before Beatrice's death. Beatrice had used the 4 Brother Adam Buckfast queens at the Wentworth family apiary to build up the heritage Buckfast colony count. From the original inherited 18 Italian and Carniolan colonies of 1947 to the documented 74 Buckfast colonies of the autumn of 1967, and Beatrice had documented the 21-year Buckfast queen rearing work in the leather-bound family apiary journal that Beatrice had left in the back bedroom dresser of the clapboard Wentworth farmhouse at her death in February 1968. Sarah had been Beatrice's only son's wife since the Wentworth and Pratt wedding at the Holton Methodist Church on the warm, dry second Saturday of June 1957. And Sarah had been 17 years old in the autumn of 1957, when Beatrice had first taken her down the apiary row at the back of the Wentworth family operation in her own new daughter-in-law beekeeper's apron, and shown her the morning spring brood pattern survey work. Beatrice had given Sarah a single Brother Adam Buckfast queen cage with a single Brother Adam Buckfast queen inside the cage on the bright Sunday afternoon of August 18, 1957, on the wooden stone apiary shed workbench at the back of the apiary row, and Beatrice had told her new daughter-in-law that one day, when Sarah had her own family apiary and her own Saturday morning long apiary row brood pattern survey work, she would remember the queen cage and she would know what to do. Sarah and Ezra had inherited the 80-acre Wentworth family operation from Beatrice in the late winter of 1968, and Sarah had continued the Brother Adam Buckfast queen rearing work that Beatrice had been doing for the previous 21 years across the spring of 1968 and the autumn of 1968, and Sarah had quietly built the Wentworth family apiary, up from the inherited 74 Buckfast colonies of the autumn of 1967 to the 80 Buckfast colonies of the cool, dry Aroostook April morning of April 8, 1972, when she knelt at the open inner cover of the first white-painted wooden Langstroth honeybee hive box at the south end of the apiary row. The slow, patient 4-decade Brother Adam Kayla breeding work at the Buckfast Abbey Apiary in Devon, England, between the autumn of 1925 and the autumn of 1968 had moved through approximately 14 successive distinct crossbreeding generations of the accidental 1922 Buckfast stock genetic recombination, and Brother Adam had spent the mid-century period between the summer of 1946 and the summer of 1968 on a series of documented Brother Adam Queen collection expeditions across the Mediterranean basin and the Anatolian highlands and the South Iberian Peninsula and the North African Atlas Mountain Range to collect documented working honeybee population samples from the surviving native Apis mellifera subspecies populations. Brother Adam had documented the mid-century Queen collection expeditions in a 6-volume Brother Adam Expedition Journal collection at the Buckfast Abbey Library, and Brother Adam had documented the post-expedition cross-breeding integration of the North African and the Mediterranean and the Anatolian and the Iberian native honeybee population samples into the developing Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant breeding program line across the second half of the 4-decade period. The Brother Adam tracheal mite-resistant Buckfast breeding program line at the Buckfast Abbey Apiary in Devon, England, had become, by the late 1960s, the documented global gold standard honeybee tracheal mite-resistant breeding program line, and the Buckfast Abbey Apiary had shipped Brother Adam queens to documented heritage apiary correspondence across approximately 14 documented international correspondent countries between the spring of 1949 and the autumn of 1968. Beatrice Wentworth had been the documented 37th International Brother Adam correspondent across the 15-year correspondence period between the spring of 1953 and the autumn of 1968, and Beatrice had been the documented 7th North American Brother Adam correspondent. Sarah and Ezra had traveled together to the Buckfast Abbey Apiary in Devon, England, in the dry summer of 1976. Sarah and Ezra had arrived at the Buckfast Abbey Apiary on the clear, bright Wednesday morning of July 7, 1976, and the Brother Adam himself, then 68 years old, had personally walked Sarah and Ezra down the long Buckfast Abbey Apiary row of approximately 140 Buckfast hive boxes at the back of the Buckfast Abbey South Meadow, and had shown them the morning spring brood pattern survey work that he had been doing at the Buckfast Abbey Apiary continuously since the autumn of 1925. Brother Adam had recognized Sarah at the Wednesday morning Buckfast Abbey Apiary visit as Beatrice Wentworth's daughter-in-law, and Brother Adam had pulled the bound Beatrice Wentworth Buckfast Abbey correspondence file from the Buckfast Abbey Apiary Library at the wood and stone apiary shed at the back of the apiary row, and had shown Sarah and Ezra the careful longhand Beatrice Wentworth letters from the Wentworth family apiary at Houlton, Maine, across the 15-year correspondence period. Brother Adam had given Sarah a single Brother Adam Buckfast Queen Rearing Journal of the autumn 1975 queen rearing cycle on the clear Thursday afternoon of July 8, 1976, at the Buckfast Abbey Apiary Library, and Brother Adam had told the Wentworths that one day, when the documented Acarapus woody tracheal mite emergence reached the American commercial pollinator industry, that the late Beatrice Wentworth Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant breeding program line had been preparing for since the 15-year correspondence period of 1953 through 1968. The Wentworth family apiary at Houlton, Maine, would know what to do. Sarah and Ezra returned from the Buckfast Abbey apiary visit to the Wentworth family operation at Houlton, Maine, on the cool, dry Sunday morning of July 18, 1976. Sarah read the Brother Adam Buckfast Queen Rearing Journal of the autumn 1975 queen rearing cycle at the pine kitchen table across the quiet Aroostook winter of 1976 and the quiet Aroostook spring of 1977. And Sarah documented in the leather-bound Wentworth family apiary journal that Beatrice had left in the back bedroom dresser the Wednesday, July 7th and Thursday, July 8th, Buckfast Abbey apiary visit. The standard Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association annual spring meeting at the Houlton Grange Hall on State Highway 1 on the warm Saturday afternoon of April 8, 1972, had been the first MCBA annual spring meeting of the Sarah and Ezra Wentworth tenure at the Wentworth family apiary, and the founder trio Mort Stebbins and Hank Bradbury and Floyd Whittemore had opened the standard founder trio welcome and news and notes opening segment at the raised wooden lectern at the front of the Houlton Grange Hall at 2:30 in the warm Saturday afternoon. Mort had read aloud the standard founder trio annual spring meeting humor paragraph at the standard prearranged 8-minute mark of the standard founder trio script, and the standard founder trio annual spring meeting humor paragraph had welcomed the Wentworth family apiary to the warm Saturday afternoon meeting, and had noted that the Wentworth family apiary had apparently continued the late Beatrice Wentworth heritage, Brother Adam Buckfast line, 1950s, European monk-bred honeybee breeding program experiment that the commercial American pollinator industry had long since retired in favor of the modern commercial Italian and Carniolan high-yield commercial honeybee colonies that the Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association membership ran on the Aroostook County clover and apple meadows. The 56 assembled MCBA members in the Houlton Grange Hall folding chair seats threw their heads back in patient public laughter at the standard humor paragraph pitch shift, and Hank, in the front row folding chair seat, threw his head back so hard his aviator sunglasses slid sideways across his sunburned forehead, and Floyd, in the second row folding chair seat, threw his head back so hard his thick salt and pepper walrus mustache visibly trembled. Sarah and Ezra, in the third row folding chair seats with Caleb and Hannah, did not laugh. The standard founder trio annual spring meeting humor paragraph was reprinted at the Houlton Grange Hall on the warm Saturday afternoons of 1973 and 1974 and 1975 and 1976 and 1977 and 1978 and 1979 and 1980 and 1981 and 1982 and 1983 and 1984. Mort and Hank and Floyd rotated the founder trio lectern host position across the 12 consecutive annual spring meetings, and the founder trio welcome and news and notes opening segment ran the standard humor paragraph at the standard prearranged 8-minute mark every consecutive warm Saturday afternoon between the bright spring of 1972 and the bright spring of 1984. Sarah and Ezra, in the third row folding chair seats, sat through every one of the 12 consecutive annual spring meeting humor paragraph readings. Caleb was 15 years old at the first annual spring meeting of 1972, and Caleb was 27 years old at the 12th annual spring meeting of the warm Saturday afternoon of April 14th, 1984. Hannah was 12 years old at the first annual spring meeting of 1972, and Hannah was 24 years old at the 12th annual spring meeting. Caleb left the Wentworth family operation for the University of Maine Orono College of Agriculture Apiary Science Certificate Program in the cool, dry autumn of 1974 at the age of 17. And Caleb completed the 4-year Apiary Science Certificate Program at the cool, dry autumn of 1978 at the age of 21. And Caleb returned to the Wentworth family operation at the autumn of 1978 as a full-time apiary master partner in the family apiary operation. Hannah left the Wentworth family operation for the Bates College Department of Biology at the cool, dry autumn of 1978 at the age of 18. And Hannah completed the 4-year Bates College Department of Biology Bachelor of Science degree in apiary entomology at the cool, dry autumn of 1982 at the age of 22. And Hannah returned to the Wentworth family operation at the autumn of 1982 as a full-time apiary entomologist partner in the family apiary operation. The slow, patient 12-year breeding and queen rearing work at the Wentworth family apiary across the spring and summer and autumn of 1972 and 1973 and 1974 and 1975 and 1976 and 1977 and 1978 and 1979 and 1980 and 1981 and 1982 and 1983 produced the slow, steady growth of the Wentworth family apiary from the documented 80 colonies of the cool, dry spring of 1972 to the documented 120 colonies of the cool, dry spring of 1984. Sarah maintained the careful, longhand spring brood pattern survey work that Beatrice had taught her, and Caleb maintained the annual summer queen rearing work that he had learned at the University of Maine Orono Apiary Science Certificate Program. And Hannah maintained the annual autumn tracheal mite-resistance laboratory test work that she had learned at the Bates College Department of Biology Bachelor of Science degree program. The slow, patient 12-year work continued. The slow, patient 12-year work at the Wentworth family apiary at the back of the 80-acre Wentworth family operation came to the documented vindication moment on the clear Wednesday morning of July 11th, 1984, at the USDA Research Laboratory Inspection Station at the southern Texas-Mexico border at Weslaco, Texas. The USDA Research Laboratory Inspection Station entomologist Dr. James II of the Weslaco field office had conducted the standard quarterly commercial pollinator industry interstate shipment inspection of a commercial Texas pollinator industry queen shipment from a commercial Texas queen rearing operation in the Rio Grande Valley on the clear Wednesday morning. And Dr. James II had identified under the Bee Research Laboratory dissection microscope at the Weslaco field office a population of Acarapus woody honeybee tracheal mites in the first thoracic spiracle of 3 of the 12 commercial Texas queen shipment worker attendant honeybees. Dr. James II had documented the first United States detection of Acarapus woody in the federal mandate National Honeybee Disease Surveillance Log at the Weslaco field office at 3:22 on the clear Wednesday afternoon, and the first United States detection of the honeybee tracheal mite became the front page news of the cool, dry Thursday morning of July the 12th, 1984, in the American Bee Journal Regional Commercial Pollinator Industry Press. Sarah read the front page news of the Thursday morning American Bee Journal at the pine kitchen table of the clapboard Wentworth farmhouse at 6:42 on the cool, dry Thursday morning of July 12th, 1984. And Sarah set down the folded American Bee Journal on the pine kitchen table, and she walked the 4 short steps to the long pine kitchen counter, where Ezra and Caleb and Hannah were standing at the kerosene-heated kitchen stove, finishing the kitchen table breakfast preparations. And Sarah said quietly to the 3 of them, in her quiet, level Aroostook voice, the single sentence, "It has arrived. The Acarapus woody honeybee tracheal mite spread northward across the Central American commercial pollinator industry, across the damp spring and summer and autumn of 1985, at an approximate rate of approximately 140 miles per month. The Acarapus woody tracheal mite spread reached the commercial Aroostook County, Maine pollinator industry apiaries on the damp Wednesday morning of August 7th, 1985. Mort and Hank and Floyd at the commercial Bradbury and Whitmore and Stebbins commercial pollinator industry apiaries north of Caribou, Maine, ran their 3 commercial pollinator industry apiaries on the standard commercial Italian and Carniolan high-yield commercial honeybee colony stock that the commercial American pollinator industry had been running since the bright commercial industry expansion years of the late 1940s. The commercial Italian and Carniolan high-yield commercial honeybee colony stock that Morton, Hank, and Floyd ran across the 3 commercial pollinator industry apiaries was not bred for Acarapus woody tracheal mite-resistance, because the standard commercial American pollinator industry breeding program had not faced an Acarapus woody tracheal mite-resistance breeding requirement at any point between the commercial industry expansion years of the late 1940s and the dry summer of 1984. The commercial Bradbury and Whittemore and Stebbins commercial pollinator industry apiaries lost approximately 73% of the combined commercial pollinator industry colony count across the damp spring and summer and autumn of 1985 to the documented spreading Acarapus woody tracheal mite emergence. The commercial American pollinator industry losses across the entire spring and summer and autumn of 1985 and the spring and summer and autumn of 1986 totaled approximately $220 million in documented commercial pollinator industry colony mortality losses. The Wentworth family apiary at the back of the 80-acre Wentworth family operation on the section road 3 miles south of Houlton, Maine, reported 0 tracheal mite-related colony mortality losses across the entire spring and summer and autumn of 1985 and the spring and summer and autumn of 1986, because the Wentworth family apiary ran the heritage Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant breeding program line that Brother Adam had developed across the 4 decades between the autumn of 1925 and the autumn of 1968 at the Buckfast Abbey Apiary in Devon, England, specifically for tracheal mite resistance. Caleb at the University of Maine Orono College of Agriculture Apiary Science Certificate Program between the cool, dry autumn of 1974 and the cool, dry autumn of 1978 had focused his 4-year Apiary Science Certificate Program research on the dissection methodology for the Acarapus woody tracheal mite identification, working under the University of Maine Orono Apiary Science Certificate Program faculty advisor Dr. Frederick Bagley, who had been the University of Maine Orono Apiary Science Certificate Program research faculty since the summer of 1963. Caleb's University of Maine Orono Apiary Science Certificate Program thesis on the Acarapus woody tracheal mite dissection methodology, had been the first documented North American Acarapus woody tracheal mite dissection methodology research paper at the University of Maine Orono College of Agriculture, and Dr. Frederick Bagley had quietly forwarded the Caleb Wentworth thesis to the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory at the Beltsville, Maryland Federal Research Station campus in the cool, dry autumn of 1978. Hannah, at the Bates College Department of Biology, between the cool, dry autumn of 1978 and the cool, dry autumn of 1982, had focused her Bachelor of Science degree research on the annual autumn Acarapus woody tracheal mite-resistance laboratory test assay development, working under the Bates College Department of Biology faculty advisor Dr. Pamela Hartwell, who had been the Bates College Department of Biology entomology research faculty since the summer of 1970. Hannah's Bates College Department of Biology Bachelor of Science degree thesis on the Acarapus woody tracheal mite-resistance laboratory test assay development had been the first documented North American Acarapus woody tracheal mite-resistance laboratory test assay development research paper at the Bates College Department of Biology, and Dr. Pamela Hartwell had quietly forwarded the Hannah Wentworth thesis to the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory at the Beltsville, Maryland Federal Research Station campus in the cool, dry autumn of 1982. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki at the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory had quietly read the Caleb Wentworth thesis of 1978 in the cool, dry December of 1978, and Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had quietly read the Hannah Wentworth thesis of 1982 in the cool, dry December of 1982, and Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had quietly noted in his Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory clinical notebook on the cool, dry Monday morning of January 8, 1979, the single, careful, longhand entry. The Wentworth family apiary at Houlton, Maine, is preparing the next generation to face what is coming. The Acarapus woody tracheal mite spread reached the mid-Atlantic commercial pollinator industry apiaries in the Maryland and Delaware and Pennsylvania commercial pollinator industry region on the warm, wet Thursday afternoon of May 9th, 1985, when the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory Regional Inspection Team identified Acarapus woody tracheal mite infestations in approximately 14% of the Maryland and Delaware and Pennsylvania commercial pollinator industry colony population during the annual May regional inspection cycle. The Mid-Atlantic commercial pollinator industry Acarapus woody tracheal mite spread reached the commercial Aroostook County, Maine pollinator industry apiaries on the damp Wednesday morning of August 7, 1985, during the August commercial pollinator industry colony inspection cycle that Hank Bradbury was running across the combined Bradbury and Whittemore and Stebbins commercial pollinator industry apiaries north of Caribou, Maine. The honeybee tracheal mite Acarapus woody works through 3 discrete life stages inside the first thoracic spiracle of the adult worker honeybee. The fertilized adult female mite enters the bee through the open thoracic spiracle of a newly emerged worker honeybee at approximately 72 hours after the worker emerges from her brood cell. The fertilized adult female mite lays a clutch of 3 to 5 eggs against the inner wall of the first thoracic spiracle of the host bee across the next 9 days. The newly hatched larval mites feed on the hemolymph of the host bee for the next 12 days. The larval mites pupate to adult mites inside the same first thoracic spiracle at approximately 21 days after egg laying. The newly mature adult mites mate inside the host bee, and the fertilized adult females migrate out the open thoracic spiracle of the dying host bee to seek a fresh, newly emerged worker. The full life cycle takes approximately 25 days. A heavily infested host bee dies from a combination of hemolymph depletion and impaired oxygen exchange at approximately 35 to 40 days after first infection. A heavily infested colony loses its winter cluster between January and March of the following year because the heavily infested adult worker bees cannot generate enough metabolic heat to maintain the cluster temperature against the winter cold. The documented Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistance breeding program line at Buckfast Abbey worked across the 4-decade period between 1925 and 1968 through a combination of 3 documented behavioral and physiological mechanisms. The first mechanism was the documented hygienic grooming behavior of the surviving 1922 North African Apis mellifera intermissa lineage, which Brother Adam stabilized into the modern Buckfast worker phenotype across the crossbreeding generations of 1925 through 1946. Worker bees of the Brother Adam Buckfast line groom one another at approximately 3 times the frequency of commercial Italian worker bees, and the elevated grooming frequency removes the questing adult female mites from the open thoracic spiracle of the host bee before the mite can enter and lay her clutch of eggs. The second mechanism was a documented elevated metabolic rate at the wing base musculature of the Brother Adam Buckfast worker that produced a documented elevated thoracic spiracle rim air current velocity, which made it physically more difficult for the questing adult female mite to enter the open thoracic spiracle. The third mechanism was a documented elevated cellular immune response inside the first thoracic spiracle wall that destroyed the larval mite eggs before they could hatch. The 3 mechanisms combined to produce a documented Brother Adam Buckfast colony-level tracheal mite infestation rate of approximately 4% against the commercial Italian and Carniolan colony-level tracheal mite infestation rate of approximately 78% across the documented 1985 to 86 American commercial pollinator industry epidemic period. The 4% infestation rate at the Wentworth family apiary did not produce colony-level loss because the 4% infestation was below the documented 30% colony survival threshold that the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory established as the working colony survival baseline in the formal December 1985 Emergency Impact Assessment Bulletin. The Wentworth family apiary at Houlton, Maine, in the autumn of 1986, carried a documented 4.2% colony-level tracheal mite infestation rate across the 120-colony working flock, and reported 0 colony-level loss across the 1985 and 1986 epidemic seasons. Hank Bradbury walked into the commercial Bradbury apiary shed at 6:12 on the damp Wednesday morning of August 7, 1985, in his cheap pale green polyester shirt and his aviator sunglasses pushed up on his head, and he opened the commercial Bradbury inspection microscope at the commercial pollinator industry inspection bench, and he placed a sample worker honeybee attendant from the commercial Bradbury hive box number 47 under the commercial pollinator industry inspection microscope. And he identified at 6:18 on the damp Wednesday morning a population of a Carapus woody tracheal mites in the first thoracic spiracle of the sample worker honeybee attendant. Hank walked out of the commercial Bradbury apiary shed at 6:20 on the damp Wednesday morning of August 7th, 1985, and he set his thick, fleshy hands on the top board of the cross fence at the south end of the commercial Bradbury commercial pollinator industry apiary, and he looked across the commercial Bradbury commercial pollinator industry colony rows for the better part of an hour, and he did not telephone Mort or Floyd across the damp Wednesday morning. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki of the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory at the Beltsville, Maryland Federal Research Station campus drove the dark green 1985 USDA Fleet Plymouth Reliant sedan with the small USDA shield on the driver's side door, the 873 highway miles north from the Beltsville, Maryland Federal Research Station campus to the small clapboard Wentworth family farmhouse on the section road 3 miles south of Houlton, Maine, across the first dry week of August 1986, arriving at the open gate at the south end of the Wentworth family operation on the clear Wednesday morning of August 6, 1986. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had been the senior entomologist at the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory since the autumn of 1973, and Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had been a postdoctoral apiary research fellow at the Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory under the previous senior entomologist, Dr. Everett Ertl, between the autumn of 1963 and the autumn of 1973. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had read the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Service Quarterly Apiary Research Bulletin since the first University of Maine Cooperative Extension Service Quarterly Bulletin of the spring of 1964, and Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had quietly read the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Service Annual September Bulletin reference to the Wentworth Family Apiary Heritage Brother Adam Buckfast Breeding Program line every September since the autumn of 1973. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki stepped out of the dark green USDA Fleet Plymouth Reliant sedan at the open gate at the south end of the Wentworth family operation in his charcoal gray wool sport jacket and his starched white dress shirt and his forest green wool tie, and he walked through the open gate at the section road toward the apiary row at the back of the 80-acre family operation. Sarah and Ezra and Caleb and Hannah met him at the wagon wheel platform beside the open apiary shed door at the back of the apiary row, and Sarah handed Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki a enameled tin cup of strong black coffee from the enameled tin coffee pot at the wagon wheel platform. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki accepted the enameled tin cup of strong black coffee, and the five of them stood together at the wagon wheel platform beside the open apiary shed door for the better part of 40 minutes in the clear Wednesday morning August light, and watched the small Buckfast workers fly in and out of the 80 hive box entrances along the apiary row in the methodical Brother Adam Buckfast working rhythm. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki said quietly, in his quiet, level Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory voice, to the four of them at the wagon wheel platform that the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory had received the federal mandate Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association Regional Commercial Pollinator Industry Tracheal Mite Emergency Loss Report on the cool, dry Monday morning of June 2nd, 1986, and that the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory had identified the Wentworth family apiary as the documented largest field-scale heritage Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant working apiary in the Central American commercial Atlantic seaboard region, and that Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had come the long 873 highway miles north from the Beltsville, Maryland Federal Research Station campus to inspect the Wentworth family apiary directly. Caleb walked Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki down the apiary row across the clear Wednesday morning August field visit for the better part of 3 hours and pulled 12 sample worker honeybee attendant samples from the central north and south sections of the apiary row for the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory Tracheal Mite Resistance Laboratory Dissection Survey. Hannah walked Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki to the wood and tin apiary shed at the back of the apiary row across the clear Wednesday afternoon August field visit, and showed him the Brother Adam queen rearing notebook collection that Beatrice had built across the 15-year period of correspondence with Brother Adam between 1953 and 1968. And Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki read the Brother Adam queen rearing notebook collection in slow, careful silence for the better part of an hour. When Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had finished the Wednesday afternoon notebook reading, he turned to Hannah at the wagon wheel platform, and he said quietly that the Wentworth family apiary heritage Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant breeding program line was the documented largest working survival of the small Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant breeding program line in the Central American commercial Atlantic seaboard region, and that Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki would be filing a small formal commendation report to the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory and the American Beekeeping Federation Regional Commercial Pollinator Industry Emergency Response Committee the following Monday morning, and that the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory would be recommending the Wentworth family apiary as the small reference site for the small national emergency federal mandate tracheal mite-resistant queen breeding emergency procurement program. The Bradbury and Whitmore and Stebbins commercial pollinator industry apiaries north of Caribou, Maine, were on the Aroostook County Tax Assessor's quarterly auction notice list. By the cool, dry first week of September 1986, Mort had lost approximately 78% of the commercial Stebbins commercial pollinator industry colony count across the spring and summer of 1986. Hank had lost approximately 73%. Floyd had lost approximately 81%. The combined Stebbins and Bradbury and Whittemore commercial pollinator industry operations went on a combined 3-property foreclosure listing on the Aroostook County Tax Assessor's quarterly auction notice of the cool, dry Monday morning of September 1st, 1986. The federal mandate National Emergency Tracheal Mite-Resistant Queen Breeding Emergency Procurement Program at the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory drove the federal emergency contract to the Wentworth family apiary on the cool, dry Friday afternoon of August 29, 1986. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki telephoned the Clabbered Wentworth farmhouse at 211 on the bright Friday afternoon, and Sarah lifted the black wall-mounted Bell System rotary telephone receiver above the icebox in the farmhouse kitchen, and Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki said quietly that the USDA Beltsville Bee Research Laboratory was authorized to offer the Wentworth family apiary the federal emergency procurement contract for 800 Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant queen honeybees at a federal procurement price of $140 per Brother Adam queen against the small late August 1986 commercial pollinator industry commercial Italian queen rate of approximately $14 per commercial queen, reported the previous Friday in the American Bee Journal Regional Commercial Pollinator Industry Price Index. The federal procurement premium was approximately 10 times the commercial industry commercial Italian queen rate. The total federal procurement contract value at $140 per Brother Adam queen for 800 Brother Adam queens came to $112,000 in federal procurement revenue against the commercial industry equivalent of approximately $11,200. Sarah and Ezra and Caleb and Hannah signed the federal emergency procurement contract at the pine kitchen table of the clapboard Wentworth farmhouse on the clear Wednesday afternoon of September 3, 1986. The American Beekeeping Federation Regional Commercial Pollinator Industry Emergency Response Committee included a published Wentworth family apiary commendation in the small October 1986 American Bee Journal Regional Commercial Pollinator Industry Quarterly Newsletter, and the published Wentworth Family Apiary Commendation referenced the small heritage Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant breeding program line, and named Sarah and Ezra and Caleb and Hannah on the published commendation byline. The Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association annual fall meeting at the Holton Grange Hall on State Highway 1 on the cool Saturday afternoon of October 18, 1986, was the 13th annual MCBA meeting that Sarah and Ezra and Caleb and Hannah had attended together, and the small 32 assembled MCBA members who filed into the Holton Grange Hall represented approximately 57% of the small 56 attendance of the annual spring meeting of April 14, 1984. Mort did not host the standard founder trio welcome and news and notes opening segment at the raised wooden lectern at the front of the Holton Grange Hall at 2:30 on the cool Saturday afternoon. Mort walked to the raised wooden lectern at 2:33 in a freshly washed plain white cotton long-sleeved dress shirt and a plain dark gray wool tie and faded dark gray wool slacks and a pair of polished low brown leather Oxford shoes borrowed from the Aroostook County Bank-granted Charity Housing wardrobe at the Clapboard, Bradbury, and Whittemore and Stebbins rooming house at Holton, and he had no commercial feed ball cap and no bottle of warm beer and no typed founder trio welcome and news and notes script. Mort cleared his throat once into the single gooseneck microphone, and he said into the microphone in a voice that no one in the Holton Grange Hall main floor meeting room had ever heard him use before, that he had not come to the cool Saturday afternoon annual fall meeting of October 18, 1986, as the founder-president of the Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association, because there was no longer a Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association, the Maine Commercial Beekeepers Association having been formally dissolved at the cool, dry Monday evening special meeting at the Bradbury and Whittemore and Stebbins rooming house On the previous Monday evening of October 13th, 1986, by unanimous vote of the three founder trio members, he had come to the cool Saturday afternoon meeting, he said, to apologize publicly and on the record to Sarah and Ezra and Caleb and Hannah of the Wentworth family apiary on the section road 3 miles south of Houlton for the 13 consecutive annual spring meeting, humor paragraph readings that the founder trio had directed at the Wentworth family apiary between the warm Saturday afternoon of April 8, 1972, and the warm Saturday afternoon of April 14, 1984. Mort read aloud a careful longhand handwritten 3-paragraph apology that he had written across the cool, quiet Wednesday afternoon of October 15, 1986, at the kitchen table of the Bradbury and Whittemore and Stebbins rooming house. When Mort had finished reading aloud the apology at the raised wooden lectern, he folded the apology and placed it on the front lip of the raised wooden lectern, and he stepped down off the raised wooden lectern, and he walked across the Houlton Grange Hall main floor meeting room to the third row of folding chair seats where Sarah was seated with Ezra on her left and Caleb on her right and Hannah at the end of the row. Mort stopped at the third row folding chair seat where Sarah was seated, and he held his thick, fleshy hands flat against the front of his borrowed white cotton dress shirt, and he said quietly the single sentence, "I am sorry." Sarah did not stand up from the third row folding chair seat. She lifted her hazel eyes across the folding chair armrest distance and met Mort's sunburned hazel eyes for the better part of 3 slow seconds. And she nodded once, slowly, and she said quietly the single sentence, "Thank you." Hank and Floyd, in the front row folding chair seats beside the raised wooden lectern, did not stand up at any point during the cool Saturday afternoon meeting, and they did not speak from any point during the meeting. The cool, dry Friday evening of October 24th, 1986, was 6 days after the cool Saturday afternoon apology meeting. Sarah and Ezra and Caleb and Hannah sat together at the pine queen rearing workbench at the back of the wood and tin apiary shed and worked the late October queen rearing wax foundation work together by the soft gold and blue Coleman white gas lantern light. Caleb, at the south end of the pine workbench, was working a Brother Adam Buckfast queen cell wax foundation by hand. Hannah, at the east side middle position, was working a autumn survey worker bee dissection at the bound entomology field microscope. Ezra, at the west side middle position, was working a autumn prep wax foundation. Sarah, at the north end of the pine workbench, was working the annual September Brother Adam Buckfast queen rearing letter that she had been writing every September to the Buckfast Abbey Apiary Library in Devon, England, for the previous 18 consecutive Septembers since the cool, dry September of 1969. Caleb married Rebecca Hartwell on the clear, bright Saturday afternoon of August 24, 1985, at the Houlton Methodist Church. Rebecca Hartwell was a 26-year-old white American Vermont heritage beekeeper daughter from a 4th-generation Orleans County, Vermont apiary family operation. Rebecca had taken her Bachelor of Science degree in apiary entomology at the University of Vermont Burlington in the spring of 1981, and had completed a 2-year Master of Science degree in honeybee disease pathology at the University of Vermont in the spring of 1983. Rebecca had first met Caleb at a regional Northeast Apiary Society annual fall conference at the small St. Johnsbury, Vermont Cooperative Extension Service field office in late October 1983. And Caleb and Rebecca had corresponded between October 1983 and June 1985 before the formal August 1985 wedding at the Holton Methodist Church. Rebecca brought into the Wentworth family operation in August 1985 a fourth-generation Orleans County, Vermont working knowledge of the heritage British black honeybee, Apis mellifera lineage that the surviving 1922 Buckfast Abbey colony had partly inherited, and Rebecca and Hannah began the autumn 1985 collaborative cross-validation work on the Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistance laboratory test assay development immediately upon Rebecca's arrival at the Wentworth farmhouse. Rebecca was 28 years old in the autumn of 1986. The American Beekeeping Federation invited Sarah to deliver the opening plenary address at the 40th Annual American Beekeeping Federation National Conference at the Tucson, Arizona Convention Center on the bright, dry Monday morning of November 10, 1986. Dr. Hachiro Shimanuki had nominated Sarah for the plenary address at the August 1986 Beltsville Internal Recommendation Meeting. The American Beekeeping Federation accepted the nomination at the September 1986 Executive Committee meeting in Atlanta, Georgia. Sarah flew the 4,000-mile round trip from the Bangor, Maine Regional Airport to the Tucson International Airport for the 4-day Tucson Convention Center Conference between the clear, bright Saturday afternoon of November 8, 1986, and the cool, dry Tuesday evening of November 11, 1986. Ezra and Caleb and Hannah and Rebecca drove Sarah the 138 highway mile distance from the Wentworth farmhouse to the Bangor, Maine Regional Airport in the family pickup truck on the cool, dry Saturday morning of November 8, 1986. Sarah delivered the 40-minute opening plenary address at the Tucson, Arizona Convention Center on the bright, dry Monday morning of November 10, 1986, to an audience of approximately 1,420 commercial American pollinator industry beekeepers and equine veterinary and apiary veterinary school faculty and USDA bee research laboratory entomologists. Sarah read the 40-minute opening plenary address from a typed 9-page address that she had drafted across the cool, quiet last 3 weeks of October 1986 at the pine kitchen table of the Wentworth farmhouse with Hannah and Rebecca and Caleb and Ezra. The typed 9-page address documented the 4-decade Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistance breeding program line at the Buckfast Abbey Apiary, the 15-year Beatrice Wentworth correspondence and queen import period between 1953 and 1968, the 18-year Wentworth family apiary continuation and build-up period between 1968 and 1986, the 6-year Caleb and Hannah education and research thesis period between 1974 and 1982, and the federal mandate Wentworth family apiary tracheal mite-resistant queen breeding emergency procurement program contract of the autumn of 1986. The audience of 1,420 commercial American pollinator industry beekeepers stood at the close of the 40-minute address in a single, steady motion that took the better part of 11 seconds to complete. They did not applaud. Hannah received a formal letter of invitation from the Cornell University College of Veterinary Medicine Department of Entomology, graduate research program at Ithaca, New York, on the cool, dry Friday afternoon of December 12, 1986. The Cornell letter offered Hannah a fully funded doctoral program research assistantship in honeybee disease pathology, beginning in the autumn semester of 1987, with Hannah's doctoral program research focus to be the laboratory development of a field-deployable Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistant queen breeding program line propagation methodology. Hannah accepted the Cornell letter at the Wentworth farmhouse pine kitchen table on the clear, dry Wednesday afternoon of December 17, 1986. Hannah moved to Ithaca, New York in the cool, dry final week of August 1987 to begin the Cornell doctoral program research assistantship. Brother Adam Kayla at Buckfast Abbey in Devon, England, sent Sarah a formal Buckfast Abbey commendation letter on the cool, dry Friday afternoon of February 6, 1987. The Buckfast Abbey commendation letter ran 4 typed pages on heavy cream Buckfast Abbey letterhead. The letter formally recognized the Wentworth family apiary at Houlton, Maine, as the documented largest field-scale working survival of the Brother Adam Buckfast tracheal mite-resistance breeding program line in the entire western Atlantic apiary region as of the autumn of 1986. The commendation letter named Sarah Pratt Wentworth as the second-generation Wentworth Buckfast apiary master, and recognized Beatrice Wentworth posthumously as the first-generation Wentworth Buckfast apiary master. Brother Adam signed the commendation letter himself at the close of the final page. Sarah read the 4-typed page Buckfast Abbey commendation letter at the pine kitchen table of the Wentworth farmhouse on the cool, dry Saturday afternoon of February 21, 1987, with Ezra and Caleb and Rebecca beside her, and she set the 4-typed page commendation letter into the leather-bound Wentworth family apiary journal that Beatrice had left in the back bedroom dresser. Between the careful longhand Beatrice Wentworth Buckfast Queen rearing entries of 1967 and the careful longhand Sarah and Ezra Wentworth Buckfast Queen rearing entries of 1969. The work continued. The work would continue.